Hi, welcome back. It is This Day in History. It's This Day in History for August 24th. This is take two because, well, I just finished doing this video and it was 35 minutes long, so I'm going to see if I can't pare it down. There's a lot of interesting stuff that happened on this day, and obviously it's not about the year. It's about the what happened on this day, as I always say. So let's just get into it. First and foremost, this is part of where I kind of went off on a tirade. The very first birthday is 1929 Palestinian leader, and he was the leader of the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Yasser Arafat, he was born on this day. Side note, he died November 11th, 2004. And I kind of went on a little bit of a tirade about the guy. Was not a good guy. Allegedly, he was the mastermind behind the 1972 Olympic Games, the Berlin Games, when the Israeli Olympic team was murdered. Supposedly, allegedly he was the mastermind behind that. And he sent in a bunch of Palestinians to go murder these Israelis in their sleep. Not a nice guy. He always, stated that he wanted peace. He sued for peace, but, the Israelis were always going to beat up on him, and he thought that, he would reach out to the international community and be like, these guys are beating us up. Please help us, blah, 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 blah. And the reality is that there's the old adage, if you don't want none, don't start none. And, well, he would start and they would finish it. So, he was the kind of guy where, like, proverbially speaking, he'd throw a rock at them and they would throw something bigger and more lethal back at them, kind of thing. So Yasser Arafat's birthday is today. Not a nice guy, not a good guy. So my uncle spent some time over there in Israel. He spent a year over there, and he spent some time over there in the mid-late 90s, right? And he said that unlike what we get in our media, our news agencies, what BBC reports, what Al Jazeera reports, what Associated Press reports, he says over there it was common knowledge that he would showboat. I'm talking of Arafat. He would showboat to the global community like, "Hey, we're an oppressed people. We want peace." But everyone knew over there what he would do is that he would call upon these young radicals to go, do their bit for Allah, and promise them, there's 72 virgins and all that other nonsense hoopla that they believe in. If they'd go strap a bomb to themselves and go into a cafe or a school or a police station or whatever and go kill Israelis, and that their place in heaven with Allah was assured, and that he would promise these young ideologues that their families would be wanting for nothing, they'd be taken care of. When the reality is that after the deed is done, he publicly cries foul, and he would tell the global community, "I condemn this," and then he'd go send the families to squalors, into the poorhouses and like. So I mean, he was a very duplicitous man, and people that have lived over there, like, they knew this was common knowledge over there. It's just that the rest of the world doesn't know it because there's a really good political spin that will always show him in a good light, and in Al Jazeera, especially being Arab-run media, they're going to go out of their way to make the Jew look bad, and that's just kind of how it is. So he was born on this day, 1929. It is believed he was born in Egypt, but they're not really sure. But that's all I'm going to speak about Yasser Arafat. If you were a wrestling fan like I was growing up, I grew up watching the golden age of WWE in the 80s. You had the Macho Man Randy Savage, you had Hulk Hogan, you had Roddy Piper, Andre the Giant, to name a few. The owner and operator of the WWF at the time, World Wrestling Federation, which later had to change its name to World Wrestling Entertainment. Vince McMahon, his birthday is today. He was born on this day in 1945. In 1947, Paulo Coelho was a Brazilian author. He was born on this day, the year that my father was born, 1947. Mike Huckabee, American politician, was born in 1955. Stephen Fry, British actor, writer, director, phenomenal actor. I love the man's work. I don't agree with his religious beliefs, but he's a phenomenal actor, and I love his work. He was born on this day, 1957. Dave Chappelle, American comedian and actor. Funny guy. Which I never really found him funny all that often, growing up, or not growing up, but, throughout the years. It wasn't until more recently that he's kind of grown on me, especially when he did a stand-up where he really wasn't doing a whole lot of comedy, but he was just speaking truth, or rather, speaking about life. And he did a bit on Trump and why Trump won, and he excuse me, he accurately described, explained, rather, how it was that Trump won the election over Hillary Clinton. And she attacked him for basically hiding behind tax laws and basically cheating on his taxes. And his quip was, well, that makes me smart. I don't pay taxes, and that makes me smart. Then here's the thing. If you want me to pay more taxes, change the laws, and then I'll follow the law. But you're not going to change the law, and here's why you're not going to change the law. Is because the same tax benefits that I take advantage of, those same tax benefits, your political campaign contributors, they're rich people too, and they take the same advantage of the tax laws as I do. So if you want me to pay taxes, change the law. But you're not going to change the law because you're going to screw them just to get to me. And he basically broke that down, and Chappelle was right. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why Trump won the election, was because he just basically broke down, here's the inherent flaw with this system. And, you're not going to change that system because, your buddies benefit from it as well. So, and Dave Chappelle's been in a few movies. He does a stand-up. He's on to something. He knows his stuff. So at any rate, happy birthday to Dave Chappelle. Happy birthday to Stephen Fry. Happy birthday, Mike Huckabee. Happy birthday, Paulo Coelho. Happy birthday, Vince McMahon. Yeah. So we're getting into the year. The year is 410. Alaric, who is the chief of the Visigoths, he led his army into Rome, and he sacked Rome. Now, this singular event symbolizes the fall of Western civilization. This is what Britannica.com said. I disagree with this statement, and here's why. Right? Did it lead to the fall of Rome? Sure. Well, yes and no. I mean, Rome fragmented into two different empires, but this event it was the catalyst to that fragmentation. But here's the thing: is it wasn't the fall of Western civilization. If anything, it was the rise of Western civilization, in my opinion. And here's why: because out of the ashes of the fall of Rome came the phoenix, right? The phoenix is the bird that rises out of the ashes of whatever. But what came about? Well, what came about was the many vast kingdoms that popped up in Europe as a result of it. And, those kingdoms formed the sovereignties that we know now of today in Europe. And not only was it the rise of those sovereignties and those cultures and those kingdoms, but that also gave rise to us over here in the Western Hemisphere. So, if it weren't for the fact that it was the beginning of the end for the Roman Empire, it was the beginning of a new start for Western civilization. So, was it the fall of Western civilization? I disagree. I think it was a reemergence of a new Western civilization, and we are the byproduct of that. The United States is the byproduct of that. Mexico is a byproduct of that. Canada is a byproduct of that. South America, all the countries in South America is a byproduct of this Western civilization renewal, is what I would call it. 1572. Although it's not made real clear, I suspect that this is what it comes down to is that this is a Catholic versus Protestant thing. I could be mistaken, but if I'm reading between the lines right, I think this is what it is. So 1572 is the massacre of St. Bartholomew's Day. It was plotted by Catherine de Medici against the French Huguenots. So I think what we're getting at is the Catholics versus the French Huguenots, which may have been Protestant. It was carried out by Roman Catholic nobles and other citizens, and so it was a big, huge deal, and there was a big massacre that happened, and not good stuff. 1803, we see the death of Irish revolutionary hero James Napper Tandy. He died in France on this day. He has been memorialized in an Irish ballad called The Wearing of the Green. 1814. It's the War of 1812. It is on this day that Washington, D.C. gets sacked. And if you've never really heard this is what happens, is that there's a series of events that actually led to the successful sacking of Washington, D.C. One of which was the failure of the Americans to properly dig in and reinforce the defenses of Washington, D.C. What happened there is that James Madison is president. He puts a general in charge who fails in their capacity to properly defend Washington, D.C. That general is fired and is never really replaced. Or if he is replaced, he's replaced with some functionary that really doesn't know what they're doing, really didn't do anything. Because the British actually took Washington, D.C., actually quite easily. It is said that the president and his entourage, the family, whatever, they were about to have dinner. And when they got the call that British are coming, we got to evacuate. So imagine, if you will, there's this whole spread of food laid out on the table, and the British are coming, we got to go. Dolly Madison, to her credit, that would be First Lady Madison, the one thing that she does is she grabs the only known portrait of George Washington off the wall, and she makes off with it. Right? So they leave DC in a hurry. They evacuate in a hurry, and she evacuates with this portrait, which is solid. I mean, the selfless act of preserving our nation's history by that single act. So when Washington, D.C. was sacked, several government buildings, including what was then known as the Executive Mansion, were burned to the ground. But they didn't burn the Executive Mansion down to the ground until they ate first. It is said that the British actually, they ate this meal that was set out before that, for the President of the United States and his family to eat. And so they ate first, then they torched the place. Eventually, we win the War of 1812. Well, um, we really didn't win that war. Britain just capitulated and said, "Okay, we're done here. Here, have your, have your country back. We're done here, and we're gonna go home now." And so they gave us this impression, this notion that we actually won the war when not really. We won a few battles, sure. The Battle of New Orleans was huge, and that was a huge victory for us, but the British kicked our asses on that one. They sacked our national capital. But when everything was rebuilt, the executive mansion was renamed the White House because of the building material that they used. It's white. I think they used like alabaster or whatever to, So the White House that you see today was rebuilt in, late 1814, 1815. That's how long that specific building has stood. So yeah, little history on President Madison. He was not a good president. He was actually a bumbling fool. And so the other thing I forgot to mention there is that when he got word that the British were coming, he invoked his executive privilege and took over the military. As commander-in-chief, he has that right. And he tried to take over and lead the defense of DC, and he botched that one too. He was no military commander, and he wasn't that great of a president either. Yes, he was one of the framers of our country, and he's one of our founding fathers, and that's where he probably should have stayed. Not a good president, not at all. 1821, the Treaty of Cordoba is signed, and that treaty basically, not only does Spain recognize Mexican independence, but actually, it solidifies the notion that Mexico has gained its independence from Spain. 1932, Amelia Earhart, she would take off it's on this day that she would take off from Los Angeles, and she would fly nonstop across the country to Newark, New Jersey. And upon landing in Newark, she became the first woman to pilot solo across the United States in a nonstop flight. She was a major pioneer in aviation. She was a major female pioneer. I mean, she's pretty amazing. 1949, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, you might know it best as NATO, which is the military arm of the United Nations. It is basically, I basically just said it. That military arm was put into being on this day in 1949. It enters into force, meaning it becomes a military entity, following a treaty that was signed 4 months earlier. So, the treaty that was signed that would have created this military entity was signed in April of 1949. And it is on this day in August of 1949 that the NATO forces that we think of today, is where they got their starts, where they're actually created into being. So we go 50 years later, 1989, or 40 years later, 40 years later, in 1989, Pete Rose is banned from Major League Baseball. And the reason why he's banned from Major League Baseball is because, there was an investigation done, and it was concluded that he was participating in gambling of baseball games, which was a no-no in the MLB. And it all has to do with the whole 1919 World Series debacle, where the 8 men from the White Sox were on trial for taking bribes to throw the World Series. So Major League Baseball has always had a very staunch view of gambling, and it's verboten, right? Forbidden. Can't do it. Don't do it. If you're caught doing it, if you end up doing it, we find out, you're done. And so that is what happened. Is he got caught? He was investigated. He got caught. He was banned. He protested for years and years and years. He said, "I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Didn't do it." And then finally, maybe the last 20 years, I can't remember when he actually came forward. He admitted that he did it. And he admitted that he did it with the caveat. He's like, okay, now can you put me in the Hall of Fame? And they said, no. We told you. You knew the rules. You knew the rules when you got into MLB. No gambling. You gambled. This is your fate. You're done. No. See you, bye. So he will never be in the Hall of Fame. Does he deserve to be in the Hall of Fame based on his his career record? Possibly. But I mean, rules are rules, and if you buck the system, then this is what happens. So sorry, pal. 2006. This is so stupid. Sorry, I'm gonna have another tirade here. 2006, Pluto is demoted from planet to dwarf planet after the International Astronomical Union approved reclassification of our solar system. I find it dumb because my whole life, since 1936, Pluto has been designated a planet in the solar system. It was our 9th planet of the solar system. And the reason why it was designated as a planet was because, dun dun dun, it has its own satellite. Ergo, that's the whole definition of what a planet is, right? So they go and decide, I don't know what their criteria was. I think they were going by size and mass. And because Pluto is just a itty bitty planet, the fact of the matter is that, is it a natural satellite of our star, which is the sun? Yes. Does it produce, because of its gravity well, does it have a satellite of its own, aka a moon? The answer is yes. So therefore, it's a planet. Dwarf planet, what? This is so stupid. This classification stuff is just nonsense, just bunk. And supposedly there's a new planet that's just been discovered here more recently, and I'm just wondering if they're going to asterisk that like they did with, coming off of baseball, the what they did with Roger Maris in '61 is they put an asterisk next to his record so that he didn't actually technically break the home run record, because in '61 they were playing more games than when Babe Ruth played, or whoever's record he broke. I think it was Babe Ruth. Yeah, any rate, tirade over. 2011, Steve Jobs resigns as CEO and CEO of Apple. Unfortunately, he resigned as CEO because he was dealing with cancer, and not a lot of people knew about it at the time until after the fact. I believe it was pancreatic cancer. I could be mistaken, but I think that's what he died of, and he died 2 months later after resigning from the company that he literally built up from scratch. 2021, Rolling Stones drummer Charlie Watts would pass away at the age of 80. And the featured event it is believed that it happened on this day. It's around this day. The year is 79 AD. Italy's Mount Vesuvius erupts. If you've ever seen the movie Pompeii, that's what it was about. There's actually 2 cities that were destroyed by this volcano eruption. It was Pompeii and Herculaneum. They were literally wiped off the face of the earth. That's kind of a misnomer. They weren't so much wiped off the face of the earth as that they were covered up. In my own lifetime, the only thing that I really have to relate is Mount St. Helens. I was 5. I just turned 5 when Mount St. Helens blew. And looking at the devastation and, the photos and the aftermath and all that, is that half the mountain slid down and it basically covered up the Toutle River Valley and just devastated everything, covered everything up. I mean, there was a resident up there by the name of Harry Truman. No, not the president. That was his name too. He refused to leave the mountain, and his wife was buried up there, so he wanted to stay there. And so when the mountain erupted, when the volcano erupted, it literally buried him alive in his home, and there was nothing to show for it. In fact, when his sister she went up there to lay a wreath, and the ground was so soft they couldn't get up there, that she was helicoptered in, and she literally opened up the door and dropped a wreath on the spot where his house supposedly was. So I mean, that's the kind of devastation that happened. Only you magnify that 1,000-fold, whatever, of these 2 Roman cities. Unfortunately, for Pompeii was actually one of Rome's major economic centers, and so I mean that they kind of took a serious hit to their economy to that. If there's ever a silver lining in this, excavations of these 2 sites were done in the mid-18th century, and it precipitated the modern science of archaeology. So I guess there's some good that came of it. At any rate, that is this day in history, and I went from 35 minutes to 27 plus. I'll take it. So we'll be back again tomorrow for August 25th. So be well, take care, be blessed. You know the drill. I wish nothing but the best for you all. I appreciate those who actually watch these videos, and whether it's 5 years, 10 years down the line, or it's several months from now or whatever, you guys are awesome. You're great, and it's my love of history that keeps me doing this kind of thing. So appreciate you for watching. So with that, I'm going to end this day in history for August 24th. Again, we will come back tomorrow for August 25th. All right. Be blessed. Take care. Have a great day. Bye.